embarrassment to the whole species.
Kintsugi, that roughly translates to join with gold, is both a philosophy and art form that treats the damage and scars of life as things that should not be hidden and disguised, but rather highlighted and embraced. In pottery, gold, silver, or platinum fills and highlights the cracks and returns beauty to an item that would otherwise be deemed broken and ugly. In the beginning of 2021, my niece mentioned Kintsugi in a Facebook post. A few years ago, she was in a car accident and since then has been suffering from a multitude of disabilities. Having to adjust to the unfortunate limitations of her body, she promised herself that she would embrace the philosophy of Kintsugi and rise above the sadness of her suffering. This inspired me to make something in celebration of her newfound strength. I would like to thank Nancy McDonough from KyotoKimono.com. She heard about this project of mine and graciously donated a damaged kimono. For anyone who wishes to visit her site, I'll leave a link in the description below. Since pastel lavender is one of my niece's favorite colors, I chose this particular kimono. Kimono are made from fabric panels with a width of only 14 inches or so I had to design my pattern around that limitation. Personally, I like my capes long, but since my niece may at times have mobility issues, only having enough fabric to make a shorter cape turned out to be a blessing in disguise. I was very careful in the position of each pattern piece to get the best use of the limited fabric. Before I started cutting, I did a test run of all the pieces on the fabric, and I'm so glad that I did, because it turned out that I had exactly enough. On the last pieces, I only had 1/8 of an inch to spare. Sewing the pieces were pretty straightforward. I had a 1/2 inch seam allowance and used a standard straight stitch for each piece. Between sewing each piece together, I ironed the seams flat. I know many don't like doing this part and save it till the end, or don't iron at all, but I personally love this part. I think it gives a sharper look to the final piece, and nothing pleases me more than seeing freshly pressed seams on a garment I'm in the process of making. Once all the pieces were sewn together, I began mapping out where the gold veins would be. I did not draw out a pattern for this ahead of time, but instead let it develop organically. I placed it on my dress form to make sure I could see where the lines would fall on the body. Since this was a vintage kimono, the fabric had some worn spots and a few stains. I started on the stains and the worn out parts for the larger gold spots and worked down from there. Once all the main larger veins were mapped out, I filled in any design gaps. I bought 14-karat gold leaf from a local company and some standard gold embroidery floss that I have worked with in the past. There are many types of glue that you can use to apply gold leaf, and it can be very confusing to say the least. In the end, I chose an acrylic base that is heat set. It was recommended that I wait until it was fully dry before I iron the gold to it, but I just found it easier to stick the delicate leaf to the glue while it was still wet. Unfortunately, I later regretted this. I waited a day for it to be fully dry, and then ironed the spots using a tissue paper, so any adhesive that melts between the gold doesn't stick to my iron. I then removed any of the loose gold with a soft brush. This worked fairly well, but there are a few areas where the gold was splotchy. It goes to show you that it is always a good idea to follow directions to their fullest. Before I started putting on the embroidery floss, I had to make what's called a floss bobbin. These tools you can find online or at any craft store. But for this project, I decided to make my own out of some scrap oak tag paper. Anyone who has ever done hand embroidery knows how easy it can get tangled. If you're new to hand embroidery, I highly recommend that you invest in some floss bobbins. It can work wonders in keeping your thread under control. And now back to the sewing. For this project, I was going to sew 2 strands of the floss at once, so I wound the floss bobbin accordingly. Making sure the floss did not twist around each other, I carefully sewed them on using a zigzag stitch that just fit the width of the 2 strands. I sewed them down one side of the marked pencil line, and then up the other side, making a total of 4 strands of floss for each vein. This was slow even by machine, but still faster than hand stitching that would have taken me weeks, if not months, to complete. As I progressed, some of the veins became wider. I love this look as it reminds me of a tree. The thicker branches splitting off into thinner, more delicate twigs. For the lining, I chose this beautiful raw silk dupione. It's dual colored and changes from antique gold to purple. For the front of the cape, I added a facing from the leftover kimono fabric. I pinned this in place in preparation of sewing it on by hand for a clean finish. Hand sewing, the handsome devil of the creator's world. I hate it. It's meticulous, it takes forever, it's hard on the hand, and I don't do it enough to really be good at it. That being said, you just can't beat the effect it has on a finished project. It can work wonders on any garment, and has a really high payoff if you take your time. Because I stitched by hand, I had great control with getting an 1/8 of an inch rollover on the hand slits. As much as I grumble about it, I am super happy with the result. From the outside, the slits are very clean and almost completely hidden. The finishing of the hem was very similar to the front facing. So I'm only going to be showing the very end and what I consider the most satisfying of all the hand stitches, the ladder stitch. When done right, the threads between the two sides of the fabric looks a lot like the rungs of a ladder. The closer the stitches, the better. And when you pull the thread taut, so satisfying. It almost makes that handsome devil worth the trouble. And here we are at the end of our little journey. I was really happy to make this for my niece. It's not perfect, and I did have a couple of trials to overcome while making it. But I'm pretty proud with how it turned out. I really hope it becomes a testament on how loved she is, and what an inspiration she continues to be to all those who are very fortunate to know her. She may face difficult challenges in her daily life. She may not be able to be as active as she was in the past, and sometimes feel like she's not the person she wants to be. But in my eyes, she was, is, and shall always remain magnificent. So, did you like this video? Did you hate it? Please comment below. If you want to see other videos like this, please like and subscribe. I hope to see you again.